Welcome, Ramadasa. This is the Jill Butler experience, and I'd like to welcome you on it. I would love for you to express and tell a little bit about who you are and how we know each other and what you are up to.
Hi, welcome. I feel very welcome to the Jill Butler experience. I'm Ramdas. I am partnering with my wife and some other local Krishna Bhaktas in the Syracuse, New York area. We have dedicated a house, and even my wife and I are working towards purchasing this house to be an ashram, like a local ashram, which ashram means shelter in Sanskrit, a spiritual shelter for people to come and learn about spiritual knowledge from the ancient Vedic tradition. And it's very relative to the modern ways we live. It's just, yeah, you got to just see it and see how it applies to your life. And you'll find it's very relative, and it very much applies to your life. And so there's a lot of nice community members, Jill being one of them. Jill Butler from the Jill Butler experience being one of them. So yeah, we just our some of our main philosophies is that we believe there's an immense power in setting the intention of calling for the divine, especially we feel there's a way to have a very personal relationship with the divine. And so we do a process called Harinam Sankirtan. Hari is the one who takes away what all that which is negative, all that which is inauspicious. Nam is the name of Hari, and then Sankirtan. San is in a group, and Kirtan is a glorification. So basically, we call the names of the Lord, and we glorify the Lord all together. And the more people we get to do that, it's the more magical the experience gets. And yeah, it's George Harrison of the Beatles. He used to do this thing with us, with our community, which we're a part of. Maybe you've heard of the Hare Krishnas. So George Harrison was a actively participating Hare Krishna, and he said the taste in the pudding is in the eating, meaning you got to just try it, and if you like it, it tastes good, and then well, that's good pudding, other than just like, well, I don't know. You won't know until you try it. So yeah, we do that, and Jill and some other local community members, they try it, they like it, and yeah, we just try and get as many people to try it and see the really profound impacts that it can have. And I know me personally, my wife personally, when we do this again, and we will sometime, I think, my wife will join me for the next one. And she's even more special personality than I am. So that will be really nice. And so yeah.
Let me ask you. So how did you start off your devotional path? Like, you didn't just come upon this, like you were on this path for a minute now, and I think it would be interesting for you to share with the audience sort of how you got involved in all of this, and how you came to the house and how you started your practice, and just some of the things that led you to the moment that you're in now, which is a really powerful one.
Sure. So, even actually to come across this, and even anyone who might be listening to this, we've all probably started this journey of trying to understand the self, understanding the divine, and understanding our connection with the divine in many past lives before this. So to pinpoint it started right here is not exactly easy for me. But I can tell you, in this lifetime, I had a really pivotal experience. As a kid, I believed in God very much. I was a good little Catholic Christian boy. I used to be an altar server, and I used to wear my nice little dress and the robes, whatever you call them. And yeah, I used to carry, they had like the cross and candles. So I used to do these altar services as a child, and my dad found it very important. So in one sense, as a child, I was instilled that there's a God and you have a relationship with the God. Um, you know, but the scope of it was like, whatever you want, just pray to God, and maybe God will give it to you. So to me, God was like a wish fulfilling genie that, I like make the sign of the cross and be like, oh Jesus, or Lord, please give me this or that. And so this is one understanding of the Lord, but it ultimately, it wasn't very deep. So naturally, as I grew older, and I started going through the modern education system, and it very much preaches and teaches um, the science through the three-dimensional senses of the human body, and maybe not understanding the full scope of the limitations of the senses. So basically, I became an atheist at one point because that's by and large what is taught in schools. So I was atheistic, and yeah, but I always wanted there to be a bigger something better. I was got into like conspiracies, and I saw all the wars and religion, and all the things that religions were used to control people. And so I kind of just I had this thought that, maybe religion as a whole is just a means to try and control the less intelligent class of people, and that the leaders of society were using these things to do that. And I actually still don't doubt today that there are people who are using religions in that way. So anyway, but I became like almost like quite cynical and atheistic, and saw no hope or love or anything like that in the world. And yeah, I lived like that for maybe about 10 years, maybe from about the age of 13 or 14 until I was about 20 years old. So 7 years, that was my worldview. And then yeah, I started in college. I hated college so much. So I was taking like drugs to do college, like the Adderall, all the stuff that the doctors were telling, I actually prescribed myself pretty much. I just went to my doctor, said, I want this. And he gets a little money for that. So he's like, all right, sure. So, yeah, I mean, that's what it is. So, so basically, yeah, I was drugging myself up, but I just couldn't even find myself the inspiration to do my schoolwork. Even though I got the grades, I did the bare minimum, but I like to research and I like to learn. So I found myself, taking all this like drugs, Adderall, to study what I was supposed to study for school, but I found myself just in endless rabbit holes on the internet trying to study like what are the inner mysteries of life, things like Atlantis and ancient conspiracies, and chakras, and opening up the third, so many like different mystical like type of things. And I was still atheistic, but I also I would say my introduction to this atheistic worldview was not going to be the answer. Was I started doing like psychedelic drugs, actually, like marijuana, mind altering drugs, and LSD, and mushrooms, and and then maybe MDMA, and all these other. I was pretty wild in my exploration phase. So I don't recommend that to anyone. I don't recommend that. Yes, this is going to have a positive impact on your life, because I know many people, and I personally had a lot of negative fallback from doing these things. But one thing I can say that they did do for me is they made me realize that my mind was conditioning my perception of reality, and that the way I was understanding reality was solely due to the lens that I was looking at through the mind and the body. So when you have a substance like, say, marijuana or LSD or mushrooms, kind of working from within to tinker with that, you start to realize that, oh, the perceptions of your mind are pretty malleable, and they can be shifted and changed by substances and other type of things. So I started realizing that how, kind of the world as I see it was only due to my preconditioning. So it really opened me up to a whole new realm of reality that I was in, through my limited mind and senses, in essence, coloring and creating this reality. But ultimately, there was a reality beyond that. And so that was happening in college. And then there was a really pivotal moment, very pivotal for me, where I, decided I would take my drug use to the next level. There was there was Joe Rogan. He's the biggest podcaster in the world, you know. So Joe Rogan's all about this thing called DMT, and it's called the spirit molecule, and it's said to flood your third eye, which is in between where my little mark is here, to flood your third eye with dimethyltryptamine, which is a chemical that this gland, the pineal gland, naturally produces. And this is produced when you dream or have visions, but it's produced in high amounts when you're born and when you die. So scientists or drug users or whatever psychonauts decided, we should manipulate this process and put it into like a powder and or a vapor, and we should make it so we can emulate that type of experience when you're born and when you die. So they do this through a kid I was working with at the time. He made like a contraption out of plumbing pipes, how to it was pretty wild. And to smoke this vapor and flood the pineal gland. So I would watch the documentary on it. I wasn't that, I usually did a little research on the substances or the things I was going to try. So, but I decided, all right, this looks kind of cool. And everyone talks about having like near death or out of body experiences with this thing. And I didn't really believe in that. I was like, well, what do you mean out of body? You are this body. That was my conditioning. That was my understanding. I couldn't really understand beyond that. And even though I had researched how to open the third eye, I had done different meditative processes previous to that, I ultimately, I still couldn't come to the understanding that I could potentially be something other than my body, because I very, very strongly identified with my body, at least this whole lifetime and probably many lifetimes before that. So, yeah, basically I took this thing, and I remember a really wild experience where you've got this like beautiful space and stars and earth behind you, and it wasn't so similar. But I remember I was with two friends, and I remember I had to like sit back on a couch, because what was about to happen is my body was going to go into like a deep trance state, and I was going to lose consciousness, and then I was going to have a hallucinatory experience while my body was back incapacitated. So I knew it was going to happen. So they're preparing me, they're with me, they're ready to catch my body when it goes back, because unless you've done it before, you could fall back and hit your head, you could do something like that. So anyway, I decided, all right, I'm going to do this thing. And interestingly enough, it was on December 21st, 2012. I was doing a bunch of research on that day. It was supposed to be the Mayan end of the world. And I really wanted something crazy to happen on that day. I wanted there something to be revolution, because I was doing the 9 to 5 working thing, I was doing the going to school thing, and I just saw no possible outlet of happiness doing life this way at that time. I was like, I hope something magical happens, and somehow like it'll be cool, another ET race, something comes out. I don't know. I was oddly hopeful for an atheist. But anyway, the Lord reciprocated with me in a way that I didn't quite understand. And I have a funny story, because I believe this was an answer to a prayer I had earlier, but we'll talk about that after. But basically, the pivotal experience was I tried this vapor, and as soon as it kind of touched my throat and started flooding into my brain, the 3D reality that I knew was just immediately dissolved. I still saw my two friends who were with me, but now they had these like cubical little two-dimensional heads, and they looked actually like aliens. And then they started to talk to me, and they tried to say like, take another hit. But I didn't hear that. All I heard were like these weird alien beeps. And it was like, like, I swear,
wow.
it sounds like that. And then on top of that, everything around me was like this far out 2D or multi-dimensional space. It wasn't the 3D living room that I was perceiving just a few seconds earlier. And then all of a sudden, I took that second hit. I somehow realized, all right, I'm going to do it. Because if I was by myself, I never would have took that second hit and I never would have had this experience. But I did. I somehow did take the second hit. And by the way, this isn't the first time. It wasn't like the modern drug scientists were the first ones to discover this chemical in the brain. Actually, shamans from Peru, something you probably have heard of, ayahuasca, is the derivative of ayahuasca is it creates this DMT in the pineal gland, but in a lesser, a much more gentle and more natural way than what I did. But nonetheless, it does create this experience as well. But anyway, I kind of did it the unnatural way. And so I got a really crazy type of experience, a result out of that. And that what happened next was I felt my body had to lie back, and it just like collapsed on the couch. And yeah, I went into like an inner world. My eyes had to shut. I couldn't perceive the world outside anymore. And yeah, then it went into some really wild multi-dimensional space. I don't know where that space is. Maybe it was in my mind, my body, I don't know. And next thing I know, I found myself within the body, and I was able to somehow perceive, similarly, like when you close your eyes, you're dreaming, you're visualizing. I was in that visual space, but I wasn't looking through the eyes or the bodily senses. I had like an inner sense, maybe you could say the mind's eye. When you have an imagination, when you have a dream, anything like that, that's not your physical eye seeing these things, either the mind's eye. So I was in this type of space, and I perceived that I was in a dark tunnel. And as I looked around in the tunnel, there were thousands upon thousands of eyes all looking at me. Interestingly enough, there's an artist, his name's Alex Gray. He actually lives near where my wife grew up. You've probably heard about Alex.
Yep, I've been to his place.
Oh, Cosm, yeah.
Near
my where my wife grew up, where I met my wife, actually. So yeah, Alex Gray, he depicts all this, so many paintings from his use of this substance as well, this DMT. Much of his art is based off this. And so he's actually painted the same type of, everything's got eyes, and like there's this like looking into you type of thing that you can actually perceive in this space. And I was perceiving that thousands upon thousands of eyes were looking at me, and I somehow knew them to be the senses of my body, that they were my body's internal senses looking at me, who was me, the soul. And I didn't really have the language to understand that at the time, but now as I progressed in my understanding of the body, the mind, the soul, who I am, what existence is, I have a better idea of what happened. But at the time, I'm just seeing these thousands of eyes, and the next thing I know, I'm like rising up through the tunnel of eyes, and then I'm like, well, where are we going? And I look towards, there's like this white light at the end of the tunnel, which is pretty like normal for those who have near-death experiences. If you've ever studied the phenomena, that they see this tunnel and there's white light and they're going towards the white light. Well, I saw that thing, and I had the realization that I'm going to die, like very visceral feeling that I'm going to die, and a very visceral feeling actually when I did go through that I did die, and that I was off onto the next thing. And so I really did not want to go through this thing, and I really did not want to die. But when you take that much of this drug, they say it's called having a breakthrough, which in my language now I'd say is just having like a little mini death.
Right.
Yeah, you're gonna go and go through that. You're gonna leave the body and have that type of dissociated experience from the body, what you might call a death of the body. So anyway, there I was going through the tunnel of eyes, and everything was looking at me, and I'm freaking out in my consciousness. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Didn't matter. I was going, and I went through the white light. And from there, that's when everything changed, way beyond what I can really explain, way beyond what someone like Alex Gray could portray in art. It was a completely unique experience where, yeah, the multi-dimensional reality that was out beyond there is just far beyond what I can describe, because you're seeing everything right now through a three-dimensional lens, through the eyes, and in the mind, and in the mind's eye, you could say, or maybe the visionary or psychic ability within only can kind of see through that scope. But I can say just what happened to me beyond that, there was no three-dimensional reality anymore. It wasn't even multi-dimension. It was just seeming like infinite dimensions were out there. And so that was really far out experience, where I was going through like a wormhole, and these wild multi-dimensional beings just kept popping up next to me and accompanying me for the journey. And I'm like really quite traumatized at this point. My soul is completely freaking out. It seems like it's traveling at the speed of mind, or millions of miles an hour through a wormhole. And now these multi-dimensional beings, and I can't make out faces, I can't make out the shapes, I can't make out any of that, because the three dimensions that I was accustomed to knowing for that whole lifetime did not exist out there. So I'm just trying to understand these beings in a completely different way. And they were nice. They weren't mean. They didn't say anything. They just accompanied me, and they brought me before like a giant being. And now
I
I'm
like that. I like that.
complete.
In front of a giant me.
No, not
The
me.
small,
Not a giant me, a giant being.
oh, being.
Yeah,
So
like,
it was like creation, creator is what you were feeling.
I don't know. I don't know. I can only just tell you what I thought I felt. But I saw that it was just this massive being that was far, like, if you imagine you're like an ant, you're like looking at like a mountain size type of I just could not find the end of this being. I was trying to like, I was just completely like shocked at
What did it feel? What was the energy emitting to you? How did it feel?
oh man. Well, right, I'd say really traumatic one. Uh, you know, well, what ended up happening is I was just, in complete wonder and awe and even horror at the same time. And yeah, well, the really I guess pivotal experience is I couldn't find the end of this being. I was just trying to understand what it was, and it appeared to my consciousness that it was so great and far beyond my comprehension that I had to realize the two main emotions that I came up with were arrogance, realizing how arrogant I had been. And then the next one that came, which I thought was the whole purpose of the whole experience, was humility, that I had to come to a point of being completely humble and realizing that I don't know anything. And so what ended up happening was my life flashed before my consciousness, and my memory became drudged. And then I actually re-entered like a 3D reality, and there were certain moments of my life that replayed. Like they say at the judgment day, your life will flash before your eyes. Well, I actually had that a very visceral experience of that happening, where I had memories of preaching atheism, because I wasn't just an atheist. I was kind of like I'm going to let you know that atheism is the way, because that's the way I see things. And, but that's not, that wasn't necessarily true. And I was learning that like firsthand right now in this experience. And I had memories of my father, like me telling him why his belief in God or Jesus was, they're tricking you. It's all like a whole big thing. And then multiple friends and other people in my life and experience that I did that with, all those memories came to me. And I realized that I was dead wrong, that I had no idea about anything to do with reality and the nature of spirit, the nature of consciousness beyond the body. I'm sitting here proclaiming like I have some answers for people, but I actually knew nothing. So that was the realization that I had. And yeah, it forced in me a feeling of humility. And you could say one of the symptoms of those who go through this experience, this in specific, this DMT leaving the body experience, is they experience something that they call the phenomena ego death. And I felt that very viscerally, that my whole identification with who I was previously died that day. That because I completely molded my whole life thinking I'm this body, I'm this mind. I come from this parents. It's got this color skin. It's got this role or lineage. It has this occupation. We create such an identity with ourselves, but actually, that isn't necessarily reality. That's just the reality that you're conditioning yourself with your mind. But it's not necessarily who you really are, especially not in eternity. We all know this, that the body and the ego, it will die. The Jill Butler experience will be something else in the next life. And you know, and me, my birth name was Ronald Medeo Jr. But that whole identity that I created for myself kind of died with me that day. And but I came back just the way I came before the being. After I had the realization that I was very arrogant, and I developed this sense of humility that I don't know anything, the being came back before me, and I was just took one last giant gander at this fantastic being in which I can't find the end of. And then just as I came, like blast off, I went back, blast back down, and those beings who accompanied me there accompanied me back down, and they brought me right back into the tunnel of eyes, and I went back into the tunnel of eyes, and then I found myself like in the core of, I assume now my heart, but in just like I came to like a resting place, and all the eyes are looking in at me, and then I had like a thought. Like a thought came to me, like, what happened? And all of a sudden I felt like tentacles grabbing my soul and like binding the soul into place. It was a really wild experience. And I look at that now as to be my mind or my brain. And the brain has such a control over the soul within the heart that it actually takes control. Like it's like it's the source of the ego, or the bodily ego, or the mind, the mental ego. And I felt that thing latching onto me with all its thoughts. And I couldn't control it. I was just getting bound up. And the next thing I knew, I was snugged back in, caged back in, wrapped in this tentacle thing that we call the body. And I had like a voice within me that said, you can open your eyes now. So I opened my eyes, and it was December 21st. So in the West, we celebrate Christmas, right? At that time. So there's a Christmas tree right in front of me in the kids' like apartment in like Totowa, New Jersey. And it's just like going crazy because I'm still under the influence of the drugs, and it just slowly kind of like stabled out. And then it was just like this perfect, yeah, it just was perfectly still. I was never so relaxed in my life. I've meditated before, but I'd never been so relaxed and calm in my life. And like I said, I was an atheist, but the first 3 words that I could muster were like, oh my God. You know, that's just like naturally what came to me. And so then all my friends, they're like, what happened? You know, because they're about to do it too. But, you know, it was my first time, so they wanted to let me go first. And we explained it, and then they did it. And then they had a certain experience as well. And so, yeah, but that was the pivotal moment where I say my spiritual life began, because in that moment, I realized that I wasn't this body. I could leave this body, and that there is a vast reality beyond the limitations of my mind and bodily senses and the way I'm perceiving reality, that there's so much beyond that. And that I have to realize that I am nothing, and my knowledge or my understanding is nothing in comparison to what is actually out there and present. And so to me, that was the beginning of like this lifetime. I had spiritual work to do. And now where I'm at, like at Mantra Central, and very engrossed in this philosophy, is a result of the many years of search and study and confirmations and prayer and answers to prayers and And that's kind of led me one day at a time to now, like where I am now, which I didn't make it that far, but here I am.
Yes, you did. You made it very far. Yeah, so some of the practices and the things that you do that really keep you an open vessel for that bigger picture, like chanting and teaching the devotional, like the Vedic scriptures and things like that. How have those things served you since you started doing them? I don't know how many years that you've been on that path of doing those things, but I know since I've known you, I've seen you fully invested in that particular philosophy, and you're constantly in that mode. So I'd like to, to talk about that a little bit, and tell me how that got started, and how it's benefited you.
Sure. Um, so shortly after that experience that I had, I really needed to know, well, what is the purpose of my life? What is the real reality? What is the real truth? What is really worth pursuing? The common eat, sleep, drink, and be merry, and work 9 to 5 till you die. It just didn't appeal to me anymore, because I had this understanding that there's something way beyond this kind of societal, I perceive it as a madness in which we are chasing after temporary things that have nothing to do with who we are as a soul, and only having to do with the temporary body. So I became like a seeker of truth. What is the absolute truth? And so I started studying everything. I studied Buddhism. I studied Hermetic, like Kabbalism, and there's all kinds of Freemasonry type of, what did they study? What did this secret society study? What is the ancient wisdom of ancient Egypt? So I'm studying all these different texts of all this different places. And eventually I found myself studying Hinduism and yoga. And in specific, I started to feel the benefits of having a yoga practice, and to cultivate meditation in my life, because I had the inner knowing that instead of getting high to experiencing all these things, that I can tap into these spaces through meditation. So,
Yes,
so I
yes.
started meditating like pretty heavily. And I had a little experience before, because I was doing a little bit of chakra work. I was doing a little bit of mantra work, how different mantras connect to different places in the body to open up certain areas and certain psychic abilities in the mind and the brain. So I started like tinkering with some of these ancient teachings just to see, well, does this work? Is this? And so I actually started getting some result like this, like an intuitive sense, a more psychic sense, being able to visualize things consciously, not in just the dream state, but to more in a meditative or conscious way. So I started doing like this. And then eventually, naturally, I wanted to study, well, what's the source of these type of practices? And many of them were rooted in the Vedic yoga and, the yoga traditions. So I started studying, and one thing led to another. I was a personal trainer at the time that I did this whole thing, and I continued with that for some time. But then I realized that I was more attracted to yoga, and the way of the lifestyle of yogi rather than the gym guy. Like I didn't have that intense desire to like push myself to such a, for what, it was mostly for vanity, so I can attract a woman or something like that, to fulfill my lusty desires. But now they're like, well, what's the purpose of all this stuff? So anyway, I started doing a yoga teacher training. And in the yoga teacher training, there's a book called the Bhagavad Gita. And you've heard of this book. I teach from this book. It's the introductory book for this Vedic philosophy. And actually what it is, it's a divine personality named Krishna. Bhagavad is God, and Gita means song or play. So it means the song of God. And it's a poem. It's part of a very large poem called the Mahabharata. It's the longest poem in recorded history, actually. But the Bhagavad Gita is the philosophical sum and substance of this entire poem. And it's a conversation between a divine personality named Krishna, who's beyond this world. And at the very least, the understanding is that he's an avatar coming from the spiritual world to teach humanity. And to the greatest warrior at the time, named Arjuna, who's on the battlefield. Now, there's also a lot of allegorical meaning where you can take the role of Arjuna in this conversation, and Krishna could be the inner supreme consciousness within guiding you. There's allegorical meaning, but at the very least, historians, they believe that this war indeed did happen, and these personalities did indeed exist. So there's that as well. So anyway, I was very attracted to, I want to study anything to do with spiritual knowledge and spiritual wisdom. So I started studying this literature, and I got told by one of my yoga teachers, and they studied with, we studied at the Ananda ashram. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's an ashram up in like Walden, New York. I'm trying to think of the philosophy. But it is like an Advaita Vedanta lineage.
Okay.
So, but so anyway, the yoga school that I found myself in was actually, they had like a lineage, which is actually rare in as far as yoga studios. Nowadays you probably don't have much of a lineage. It's like, oh, I learned this on this yoga teacher training, and now I'm certified.
Right.
But there was some of that. There was plenty of that present in the yoga teacher training. But there is also was like a deeper spiritual lineage. They were connected to an ashram, a group who was studying under a real live guru. And actually, interestingly enough, the founder of this Krishna consciousness movement that I'm following, Srila Prabhupada, you've heard, he actually, that was his first place he stayed in when he came to the West. That was like the first a place that he actually had like a preaching platform, which was very interesting that I landed there.
So obviously, no coincidences. Obviously, you've worked with his energy before, and so he was setting you up for where you are.
Yes, to me, that was the very obvious thing. And then especially when I read Bhagavad Gita, in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, it's very practical, it's very analytical, and it's very logical. And anybody can apply, especially the first beginning teachings. And then once you go through chapters 2 to 6 of the very practical and the logical understanding and different processes of yoga, then the faith-based yoga systems of bhakti, or love and devotion, take over the Bhagavad Gita. And then from that level, you can't measure anymore. But so I was loving the Bhagavad Gita. I was reading, this is so practical. This is so like true. These are just basic truths that anyone can observe out of life. But, it's like obvious truth, but no one has really ever put it so in your face before. So Bhagavad Gita is kind of like that. So I studied Bhagavad Gita and I really liked it. And then it started getting into the bhakti and the nature of God and his position and the divine personality, who he is and what our connection. And then it started getting really far out for me. But I really, really I liked it, but I was still like a little hesitant. I'm like, I don't know, this could, what if this guy is just like the ultimate narcissist or something like that? And, so I was a little skeptical, but I was fascinated, to say the least. And, but then it got to the 11th chapter, and in the 11th chapter, Arjuna wants to see the form from which Krishna created the universes and everything around him, existence as we know it. So Krishna agreed to reveal this form to him, and he does. And the description of this form, I kid you not, every description was matching and making me feel the experience I felt when I was before this vast being in which I couldn't find the end of. And in the way it was described in the Bhagavad Gita was similar to that. And I just had such an inner confirmation, this is it. This is the thing you were looking for. You've been searching so much up until this point, and this is it.
You found your sweet spot.
I did find my sweet spot, but I didn't necessarily feel like I wasn't feeling the sweet spot. I was actually in a really traumatic period of my life where I had gotten kicked out of my house for deciding I wasn't going to join the workforce and dropping out of college, and then starting to just survive off of sharing plants with my friends. We'll just keep it there. And so I like moved out of my house, and I'm living with like some roommate out in like New Jersey somewhere. But you know what? I was finding what was going to be the thing that would guide me for at least probably the rest of this life. Who knows? Maybe something else revelatory will come into my experience. But yeah, I felt confirmation from God. I felt very connected, and I felt like God was speaking to me. I felt that way the entire Bhagavad Gita up until this point, but that to me was just confirmation that like this is real, and like actually you have some practical experience with this. And
So it sounds like, and I've heard this and I felt this myself in various things that I've been in invested in reading and learning. It sounds like there's powerful codes, and I have read a little bit. I haven't read the whole thing, truthfully, but I do feel, and I know that you understand this, and you even talk about it when you teach at Mantra Central, that Sanskrit is the most ancient writings there are, and a lot of this, and there's a lot of, it's Sanskrit, and there's translations in there, and there's different, you can figure out what things mean. But I can tell from my experience with you over time, since I first met you, you're much more fluent in that translation and in those codes than when I first met you. So it's like before you were just stepping into it and getting your feet wet, and now you're like channeling like the Krishna energy, like the story, the energy, and the truth. And this is something that people need to really understand. When you invest in things that are connected to these holy things, you become them, and from the inside out, and you become a spokesperson for that energy and that story and that truth. And the Bhagavad Gita is a powerful tool, an ancient tool, and you are giving the codes and translating when you do the classes and when you speak about it. Even if it's not completely obvious, it's happening through your dedication and your intention, because your heart space is so intentional in wanting to share these gifts and these understandings.
yeah, well, thank you. I'm trying to do that thing. I'm still, a pretty beginner at it, but yeah, since I've known you, even in the past 2 years, we've been here about 2 years now. Yeah, significantly more and more, you can say, downloads have happened into my inner being of understanding these ancient Sanskrit teachings, moving on to graduating teachings. Because actually, this is the interesting thing, is even though Bhagavad Gita is a very profound and very vast teaching, it's actually just like the baby
The beginning.
Yeah, just the baby beginner step into these yogic processes and what it actually means to practice yoga. And yoga, what does yoga mean? Yoga means communion with the Supreme. And, or you can say the Sambandha Jnana, or the knowledge of our relationship with the Supreme. So Bhagavad Gita only just initiates you could say, but then like it gives you like a spiritual birth, you can say. But then the actual practical application of that, there are many other graduation teachings, Puranas, the chief being the Bhagavat Purana or the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's something like we really, ultimately, we hope that if the public, we started a little reading through it on YouTube on my, yeah, I don't have very many followers, but there is like a Ramadasa Bhakta channel on YouTube.
Oh yeah, everyone should check it out.
Yeah, and we share these things, and we share these teachings, and we're trying to get people Because Bhagavad Gita is ultimately, it's going to lead you to the understanding of one, who you are as a spirit soul, two, what is karma, the actions and reactions, how we act in this world, it's going to come back in every which way, and it's going to be exactly just and exactly what you need at exactly the right time. And it may not be exactly comfortable, but it's going to be there, and we have to deal with it. Then there's time. Time will not stop for anybody. Then there's the Supreme Lord. There is an all-powerful being, an all-powerful existence, and you have a relationship to this being. And then there's one more nice, it's karma, which is the actions I mentioned, kala, which is time, the jiva, which is the spirit soul. Yes. Then there's the Supreme Lord, and then prakriti, which is the material energy or the material nature, the world that you're seeing all around you, the temporary world. It has its own energy, and it's always subject to time, and it's actually always subject to creation, maintenance, and destruction. And if we understand all of these things, we can actually be initiated into the real spiritual purpose of life, which is what the ancient rishis are giving in these ancient yoga teachings. So Bhagavad Gita is like the ultimate initiation into that, where you're the whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to lead you to a point of one, cultivating the favorable qualities for this type of life, because it's not for the faint of heart. It's for those who are going to dedicate a significant portion of their life. And actually the ultimate teaching of Bhagavad Gita is well, you could say the two ultimate verses. You know what? Would you mind if I read them to you?
Oh, sure.
I feel like that would be better than me just trying to quote them. I can quote them, but not as well as if I just read them. So it's 1865 and 66 of Bhagavad Gita, and 65 is Manmana bhava madbhakto mad yaji mam namaskuru mam evaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. And it means, always think of me. Now this is Krishna speaking, and become my devotee. Worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this, because you are my very dear friend. And that's the first very important verse, most important verse, becoming like a devotee of the Supreme Lord. And then the last one is Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Moksha Yishyami Ma Shuchaha. And it says, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. So that's like the main substance of Bhagavad Gita, and is in those two verses that Krishna is going to teach. He teaches many paths of yoga in Bhagavad Gita, but the ultimate one is that surrender unto him, and then he'll carry you beyond all of the sinful reactions that karma is dealing, because we can't avoid it. We go outside, we step on a bug, there is some reaction, there is some type of thing we have to deal with. We don't necessarily realize it, but there is always the material world, with the second law of physics, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So this thing is happening, this process of karma. Not to say like we should be scared of it, but this birth, death, disease, old age, these fundamental problems we're all dealing with in the world are a result of our many past experiences in the world, and what we've done in up to present in this world, and what we'll do in the future up until death, and before we somehow get recycled and take the next form of existence. So anyway, we're the ultimate salvation Krishna recommends is just surrender unto him, and he'll carry us through this thing. And that, it's like the spiritual lifeboat that we all need, because we're in like kind of a self-defeating jail of the false ego. And like, we're the holders of our own key. It's our own body and mind identification. And, the two things, the two symptoms of one who's encaged are the feelings of I and mine. Like, I am this, I am that, I am this, not understanding, and this is mine, that is mine, that is mine, and this is mine. The more that things are about this in the consciousness, the more one is encaged in this false identification. And so Krishna is trying to give us the opportunity. He's giving us the key to get out if we'd like, but we have to, kind of approach the warden and I know it's not exactly ideal that people are like, I don't want to, be
Well, what
living
are
in a
what are
prison.
what are some of the tools that that you use? I know some things that I've done at Mantra Central, but like what are some of the things that you do that keeps you in the devotional state every day?
Yeah, I mean, we are doing, right, that last thing, Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto, always think of me and become my devotee. So we're always doing practices. How can we think of Krishna? So one of the main ways to think of Krishna is to do a process called kirtan, which kirtan means to glorify, but it also can be understood. The practice of kirtan is the chanting of the names of God, or the person you want to glorify, or the thing you want to glorify. So we do Harinam Sankirtan. So we actually just call Krishna's name constantly. We're always singing his name. We're singing about his qualities. I mean, I was just singing about his teachings, I gave you the Sanskrit verses, but it's actually poetry, and it rhymes, and it has verse. So you'd say Manmana Bhava Madbhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru Mami Vaishyasi Satyam Te Pratijane Priyosime. So we're always singing his teachings, we're singing his pastimes, his qualities. There's prayers we do every morning. We get up, we start the day with called Mangal Arti, and there's I'm like a priest. I have like a little priest thread here. It's called a Brahmin thread. So I'll like wear like a whole priest outfit in the morning. Not everyone has to do this thing, but I've decided to do this thing. That's all. And we do certain forms of worship that allow the mind and the consciousness to focus on the Lord. So I have my priestly duties, which I'll be honest, most people will not understand them. And that's okay. It's not really something that I would say, yeah, if you're just starting out with all these processes, learn how to be a priest. But it's something I've decided I wanted to do in my life, and it does help me. The practices, they do help me. So there's different, like, have you ever heard of puja?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, puja is like different articles of worship that you can offer to like a deity or a morti of the Lord. You could even, like, there's a painting behind me. A painting could be a morti, and these are forms in actually which the divine is reaching you through the physical world around you and giving you a portal to access him and her through that portal. So that's like a picture of Radha and Krishna being pushed on a swing. And actually, whenever I look at it, I can somehow try and absorb myself in that type of consciousness and that type of destination that ultimately helps me get through the muck of this world, because there's going to be problems in this world. It's guaranteed, unfortunately. I hope that's not a surprise to anyone, but everyone kind of knows that already. They've experienced that their whole life, and they'll keep experiencing that. But so there's different ways in which you can absorb your mind in the divine, and ultimately in Krishna. And the chief is just simply calling his name. So we do a ton of that. We have, after we do our prayers and our bhajans, which ultimately result in us singing his name. You've done it with us. The Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then we'll play drums. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, and then like that. And we'll keep going, and this really helps invoke like feelings of like, this is what I'm doing. This is and it takes your mind away from, because a lot of the times our suffering, most of the time, almost all of the time, the suffering actually isn't the thing that's happening to you. Like in Pirates of the Caribbean, Johnny Depp, who was Jack Sparrow, he's like the problem is not the problem, right? It's the attitude about the problem, something like that. But that's actually the truth. It's the mind in its understanding of the so-called problems that create the problems. But actually, like the sage, they can have their arm lopped off, but if they're in the right frame of mind, the right consciousness, they don't have to be affected by that. That's like a whole nother level. I don't
I,
recommend
I,
trying to
I
cut your,
think, and I think too, if I could interject,
please.
Mantra Central, because of all the chanting and the bhajans, it's in a very high vibrational state. So when you walk into the front door, the kind of energy that you feel in this dwelling is very, very high vibration. And when you do chant, you're actually summoning the energy of Krishna and all the connecting to all the devotees that exist, and you're connecting and you're tapping into those vibrations. And when you create a space of devotional living where you pray together, where you sing together, where you eat together, where you give the deities prasad, you feed them before yourself. When you go through all these intentional forms of spirituality and devotional living, and you do that in a house with like-minded energies, you're creating a vortex of high vibrational energy that is affecting all of Syracuse, the state of New York, and it's traveling. And it's really, really important for the planet for these types of dwellings to exist, so people can go and feel that energy and understand without drugs, just getting into a certain meditative state and getting into a certain energy. And the chanting and the bhajans actually lift you into that vibration, and you are no longer your external 3D body and person. You are simply turning into your spirit, and you're jumping into your spirit body, and everybody's spirit body is with everyone's spirit body, and that's where the magic happens. And that's really important for people to understand. At Mantra Central, that happens. I've actually witnessed and been a part of that situation with various different spiritual people that have come through, and yourself, KG and Karuna, who actually have started that house,
Of
their
course.
energy and the things that they've done. So that's something very, and another thing that needs to be understood is your wife, Sita, she is actually she's cooking all the food and doing a lot of the like the dishes and the things that need to be done to keep that house afloat.
Of course.
She's a very big part of that, and she's doing it in a very devotional and very intentional way that is making that food very highly, the vibration in that food is next level. I've eaten it many times, and I have felt the shakti of what she's put into it, from her heart space and from her intentional love and from her dedication and devotion to all of this that she holds in this house with you.
Oh yeah. I mean, she's an excellent devotee, and she does a lot of the more thankless tasks, but that are necessary for this to run. But actually, that's actually probably the main process. There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita that mentions that even all that you offer, just offer it to me. And he says, I like a flower, a fruit, or water, or a leaf. So including all food stuff. So we offer that food in there's like a ritualistic sacrifice called the offering of Bhog. And then when you offer the Bhog, or Bhog means enjoyment, when you offer that for which the Lord to enjoy, when he enjoys that offering, afterwards, when you then take that offering and you feed that to others, everyone gets spiritually infused by that offering. And as you were saying, that the energy that the Lord, the mercy, prasadam, we call it prasadam. Prasadam is the Lord's mercy. That mercy is shared with everyone. And we've seen it work. The more prasadam that goes out and people receive it, it's like this spiritually empowered food that, and we see it, you know, when we only strive to eat prasadam. Why? Because when we digest and we're eating food that's offered in prayer, then how it makes up and works our body is our consciousness then can go into prayer very easily, because that's what we're made out of, you know, where our body is made out of that prayer. So we try and feed everyone who comes here. And it's also mentioned in the Vedas, no spiritual sacrifice is complete without the sharing of spiritual food stuff. So, you know, we always do that. That's always part of the program. And my wife is huge integral in that. There's a really nice other couple now, Sati and Murari, who are also helping and doing cooking and kirtans. And, you know, we have another, devotee, Jai Krishna, who's going to join us next week. We got a lot of exciting things happening at Mantra Central.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's great. Well, it's important, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you come on is because I want people to understand that these types of spiritual places are exist, and this isn't Syracuse. This isn't far away. You don't have to go far for this. It's and you have multiple programs a week, at least two, right? At
Well, we
least
have
two.
two ones open to the public, like, you know, everyone bring your friends, we'll cook a big feast. But actually every day, you could say we have 9 programs a week, because every day we do our morning program and we invite anyone to come. My wife just stepped in. That's why the light got around me. But so we have we have 9 programs, you could say, but 2 main ones that we encourage the public to definitely join in on. And that's Friday nights, 6:30 to 8:30, and then Sunday afternoons, 11:30 to 1:30. And you can Google Mantra Central, and it seems like to be just a house, but we have these beautiful deities, a beautiful altar, and beautiful devotees, and coming from all over the world. And like she was mentioning, KG and Karuna, and I think you guys had KG on here.
I did
Yeah,
have
3
Casey
weeks
on
back.
just a few weeks ago, actually.
Oh, so yeah, so KG was on here, and him and his wife are still very instrumental in running this, even though they do many things from a distance, but they come and join us for some time of the year as well. And we're all working together to invite special guests and other spiritual practitioners from all over the world who are doing this. And it lifts everybody up, and it's supposed to be an ashram. And that's what an ashram is. Ashram means shelter, shelter from what we have so much, so many miseries that this world is just pumping out. The process of creation, maintenance, and destruction causes so much suffering to all the species of life. And we can observe this, you know, the old age, the disease, you know, most animals, the way they die is getting like attacked and eaten by something else, which is like, you know, it's a frightening existence. But these spiritual practices, and the goal is to have some type of shelter, some type of relief from the kind of, you could say, the cruel aspects of the world, because there is a certain, especially if you're atheistic, and like I said, I've been there. That was the whole first part of my story of how I've been there. But it's like a cruel end, you know, like you can't fight it. You don't want to die. You want to keep enjoying, and it just gets your facilities for enjoyment through old age and disease get less and less and less, and then you're forced out of the body at some point. And if you don't have a understanding beyond that, it's like kind of like a really sad, cruel type of way to go. But it's giving a shelter to, you know, those of us who are in this world, and we are suffering. And I know I'm suffering still, even though I have all these spiritual tools at my disposal. Still, it's like getting over this suffering nature it's hard. It's not easy, and so we can all work together. That's kind of what we are
Well,
doing.
that's really important, and thank you for your vulnerability in saying that, because so many people are turned off by any sort of religion or practice because they feel that somebody's standing above them, you know, sort of talking down to them. And to say that, yeah, we're all equals, and we're all on this path, and we're all in it together, and we're just one big human community on this planet. And you know, this is a space that people can come in and can feel welcomed, and feel that they have a place to be to do the devotional work. And, you know, even if it's one day a week, it does lift your week. You know, I've come many times and felt, you know, much different after I left than when I walked in. And, you know, I have my own spiritual practices and I have my own things that I do on my own, but there's nothing like doing it with others. And there is uh a powerful energy that comes together with like-minded people in their heart. And when you sing together, that's like a whole nother level. And the singing really, really shifts your vibration. It's really powerful. And breaking bread with another human being and sitting across the table and sharing stories and sharing truth and understandings, that's very powerful. We've gotten away from that as a society. We've gotten away from sitting at a table and being with people and not being on our phones and just being present and mindful with another human being. And that's something that you all do over there. You know, you have a lot of space, and it's everyone feels very welcome.
Well, thank you. And don't forget the dancing. I especially when you come,
Yeah,
you bring dancing.
I usually get up and dance. Not everybody does, but yeah, there's definitely a handful of people, and the drumming is beautiful. The heartbeat drumming, the drumming that brings you to your heartbeat, that brings you to creation and breath and all that. It's all just so inspiring and mood lifting and creates such a high vibration. As I said, it really does.
Mm. Well, thank you so much for your appreciation. And yeah, we want to open it up to literally anyone. And yeah, I thought it was really nice that you mentioned that, you know, in many religious places you might feel like a condescending, and it's you know, something, a human condition. What part of our I and my illusion is that we can think like, ah, yes, I am better than others. But actually, you know, the advanced bhakti teachings, you know, are that we should actually, there is a real spiritual equality among all the souls. We're all equally connected to the divine. And even in the animal forms of life, the plant forms of life, even microorganisms. But there is a rarity to this human form of life. And what distinguishes the human form of life from any other form of life is that the human being can actually ponder its existence, where most other species, almost all of them, they're running off of instinct, you know, like, oh, food, let me go immediately. You know, that's why they have mouse traps, you know, because they know the instincts, they can't, you know. And actually most human beings, we have these same instincts, but only the human form of life can really ponder deeply its existence, and to really ponder what is the absolute truth, what is the purpose, at least here in this world. There are other species beyond,
Yeah,
but in
other
this world,
dimensional beings.
yes, of course. But in this world, this form of life is so special. So for all the humans who are trying to figure out, well, what is my purpose in existence? What is going to ultimately give me real happiness? It provides answers for that, and shelter, and a practical way to live these things. And yeah, I thought it was really nice. You said, you know, even just coming once a week, you know, the whole goal is of mantra centralism that everyone has to live here too. It's the only way for salvation. No, it's meant to give everyone, it's just like a place to come sharpen your tools so that we can all go out and use these tools to create more such spaces throughout the world. You know, you see like the beautiful earth behind you in your photo. There should be thousands and millions of mantra central like places everywhere, ashrams. And there are already very many ashrams in the world. And I know in the Krishna consciousness movement, we were to make as many ashrams as possible. And I know personally, after I'm in the, it's my intention and my wife's intention to not just have one ashram here in Syracuse, but to also move on to Rochester and all these local places that people should have somewhere to be relieved of the basic sufferings of human condition. You know, at least if you're hungry and you want friends, come here, we got you, you know, for at least some time, you know.
And don't forget, you're also you're giving is wisdom and teachings from various Sanskrit texts, and giving, because you have spent time, like, pat yourself a little bit on the back. I know that's not why you're here, but you have spent a great amount of time studying and learning the text, and you hold space for sharing that with people and making people think, giving people ideas, stimulating their thoughts, stimulating things to process through their day-to-day lives, through their, their existence, and giving them an understanding, hopefully in a vessel to get back to their heart. Because ultimately, when we live in our heart, everything is one. And that's what that whole fifth dimensional energy and that whole evolution and ascension and all this other stuff that they talk about in the spiritual world, which, is a different form of understanding. But all what we're really looking for is to be back into that heart space, and all the different tools and places and people that can help us there. All of it's important, and what you guys are offering is a great tool and a great place to hold space for that, and to get closer to that heart space. And your service and dedication by doing everything in that house, around that house, and all the things you're doing, is you're holding that energy so beautifully in your heart to welcome others into it. And that service is important, and people don't understand how much dedication goes into what you guys do and what KG and Karuna do. And there's so much time and effort into your practices. And yeah, not everyone can live like that, but everyone can learn from that, because it's important. That devotional living, like if you go to India, I haven't been there yet, but everything I've learned from it, there's like ashrams on every corner, there's like spiritual places everywhere you look. Like, that's what it's all about, because that's what, people have so much love in their hearts and so much dedication. And to have something like that down the street here locally is wonderful.
Yeah, it's we can't agree more on the importance of trying to do what we're trying to do. It's why we're doing it. And yeah, it's a humble attempt. And but yeah,
Well,
we're pretty.
you have the universe behind you. When you do something from your heart space, when you're intentionally doing something from your heart with the idea of serving the planet with compassion, grace, and love, it will always succeed. There's never a chance for it not to succeed. So you might have bumps in the road, you might have stumbling blocks, because that's what human is being about. But ultimately, you're going to be held in Krishna's heart and Creator's heart.
Oh yeah, we're feeling that. And I thought you said something really nice there, that you're always going to succeed when you're acting from your heart, when you're acting from that place of what we would say Bhakti Yoga, or communion with God through love and devotion. Yeah, even if it doesn't work out how we want it to work out, or the mind is thinking it needs to work out, we're always understanding, like, like the Christian teaching, thy will be done. The universal will, the Lord's will always be done. And that we're always learning, like, this is the best way for whatever reason. Like, I don't know, I can't see it from right now where I'm in the thicket, but from the bird's eye view, you're going to see, like, this is going to be helpful. And I've seen that time and time again in my life. And in this whole process of doing the Mantra Central services here. And I am so shocked how much of a full-time job. I did not think I was getting. I was really attracted to it in the beginning, because I was like, wow, I'll have a lot of time to do my spiritual practices. And then it turned out to be like, oh man, this is like a full-time responsibility. And I'm trying to also do all my spiritual practices, keep the time to do my spiritual practices. Um,
It is the spiritual practice. It
yeah,
is the spiritual practice. You
yeah.
existing, you just holding the space, holding the body, doing what you do, whatever it is, just you two being in that house. That is the practice, my friend. So no matter what you do outside of that, that's gravy. That's icing on the cake. The
Yes.
cake is the energy that you create in the story that you're giving to every single day, and your dedication to giving to it, and not quitting and not giving up, but
Mm.
realizing that the service work to humanity is the most important job on the planet. There is nothing more important than serving your fellow man.
Well, we're trying our best to keep the seva attitude that you're so nicely illuminating right now, you know. So that's, yeah, we're trying to do, you know, the seva, you know, which is the service to others, the service to the Lord, and then also that bhajan, which is that, you know, internal, really deep meditative connection to the Lord, which is also what we're ultimately trying to teach, and said to be the ultimate seva. If we can engage others in practicing this bhajan, that they will, everyone has the tools for not only being supremely happy, but also for really serving everyone, you know, from our fellow man to the vegetations around us to the animals around us. But ultimately, you know, at the spiritual level, there's so many spiritual entities that we're not perceiving around us. So there's so much seva to be done. So yeah, we're trying something, and we're yeah, we haven't seen you in a little bit. We were hoping to see you soon.
Yes, yes, you will see me soon. You're planting the seeds, and you know what? You never ever know when the flower is going to bloom. So all the seeds that you're planting, you may not see them bloom for 10 years or 5 years or 5 months, but you will eventually, every time you plant a seed, you will see something come from that seed. And that's what you guys are doing right now. And it's so important for that story to continue, and for you and Sita to feel supported and loved and honored for all of that. And that's what, you know, I'm trying holding space for right now for you, is for that to be felt in this video, for that to be felt from my person, from my soul to yours. And I want other people that get to witness this video to also understand it, because I understand it. I have traveled, I have seen, I have been involved in all different kinds of spiritual groups. I've been, you know, meditating since I was 18 years old. I used to meditate for an hour a day for like 20 years. I don't meditate that much anymore. I do still meditate, but not, you know, for that length of time anymore every day. But I understand what these things do and the states that they are able to put you in, and the truth that gets to come through you and gets translated to others. And those things are precious right now, especially like you said, there's just so much shifting and changing at the planet. We're pretty much tearing down the old to build a new. And that tearing down of the old, which is was just cyclical, I'm sure you understand that quite well. It's cyclical in nature, so this was meant to happen. But this is the first time, as far as what I know and what everyone that I think has any understanding of this knows, this is the first time that we got to actually vibrationally jump while still staying in a human body. So this is a tremendous roller coaster that we're on, and it's only going to get a little bit crazier because we're going to see a lot of things fall apart. So places like what you have are very strategic and very sought after, in the sense of you know, like you said, refuge, a place to go and a place to feel safe during all the, you know, tribulations and all the ups and downs and the things that are going to be, it's going to be hard, you know, because things are going to change tremendously in the next year to 10 years. It's going to look like a whole nother planet. You know, the earth is going to shift, it's going to break apart, there's going to be water where there was states. There's, I mean, the amount of things that we're going to see in our lifetime, um you know, is going to be tremendous. And it's actually a humongous blessing that we're here to witness this and be a part of it.
Mm.
But places like Mantra Central are going to offer that space for people to go to. And so, you know, it's important. It really
Yeah.
is.
I really like what you said, because yeah, anyone who's looking at the trends of the world, it's for many people it's getting to be a lot more, so much more tribulation, but you're seeing all these spiritual jumps in certain groups of people who are able to make so much advancement due to the tribulations forced upon them. So yeah, naturally, Prabhupada, the founder of this movement in the West, he was predicting this since his appearance here in the 60s. And he felt the same way, that this is all going to collapse, actually. This whole, world, as you're seeing, industrialized world, the way it's all running, he felt it was going to collapse. And he actually felt that at some point, that we need to continue these also into the rural communities. Maybe we have to start now in the, more urban centers to gather people, but to also take these into the rural communities. And he said, then when it does all fall apart, that millions of people will come to our farms, because they'll have a way to actually exist in whatever comes next. And I don't know if you're much into the Vedic astrology. Astrology is an anga in the Vedas. Anga means limb. It means it's not like the essence, it's not the heart, it's not the of the highest importance, but it's a tool that can be used to enhance the greater Vedic wisdom. So the Vedic astrologers are all predicting that for pretty much since 2020 up until 2030, the world is going to go through incredible tribulation, and it was spot on. There was like this little devotee boy named Abhigyanand who he predicted COVID. You might have seen him before on YouTube. I didn't mean to plug him on this, but it was pretty amazing.
It's okay, you can plug anyone you want.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. He like predicted it. And he just predicted the Israeli war right before it happened too, which he's really spot on. He's really good with this Vedic astrology. But basically, many of the astrologers, they're all on the same Vedic astrologers. They're all on the same page that coming up until 2030 is going to be a really rough time for the planet and the humanity at large. But in these rough times, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, only 4 types of people will come to him. And they are: 1, the distressed; 2, the needer of resources or wealth or, food. I need this. I'm starving. I'm hungry. I need shelter. 3, the curious. And then 4, the best one, which is those who are pursuing the absolute truth. But the more that these distressful conditions, the people needing more resources or shelter, all these things, they come about, actually more people will be receptive and open to spiritual teachings, or approaching the divine and approaching a solution, because they're actually understanding they have a problem. Even though the fundamental problems of birth, disease, old age, and death are there for everybody, when things get a little rough, we notice them a bit more. And that's in one sense, it is favorable conditions for spiritual awakening for others, which is why we reckon that the Lord has these things come into our existence in the first place, because it is all ultimately out of love, and it is all ultimately for our well-being. So yeah, when this does happen, what you're saying,
our consciousness is evolving, and with our consciousness, our body has to go with it. And so it's so magical. Not everybody's going to want to stick around. A lot of people are stuck in the old ways, and they want to keep the density, and that's okay, because they'll go where they want to go, because we all have sovereignty, and we all get to choose. So it's going to be an interesting story. But I think we definitely have to do another podcast, and definitely with Sita.
Yes, she's she'll come and say hi for a moment.
Hey, Jill.
Hey, Sita.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. You're doing what you do, which is awesome that we know that, because it's so important what you do. I talked about you in the podcast, so you can go back and listen to some of it. But I do want the next time we have a podcast together for you to come on as well, because you're a very important part of the story over at Mantra Central. So I want you to talk about like your experience and what you've come from, and give a background and from your side of the story.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really nice. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I was planning to be here and then sometimes the day just disappears somehow or other.
We're all divinely going where we need to go. It's all
Yeah.
works out exactly as it's supposed to, even if we don't understand it. It's
Yeah.
all perfect.
I'm really happy this is your understanding because some people don't get that and then they'll just be upset with
Well,
me.
listen, the world is changing and people better catch the love bug because it's coming for everyone and you
Yeah.
can't escape it. And if I can share it, believe you me, I'm going to.
You're so sweet. Yeah, thank you so much for doing this like with us and also like for us for the project and everything because
Yeah, thank you.
you know,
Jill.
it's a very for us it's a really transitional time. I mean, I'm sure you guys talked about the next month like things getting and we're a little we know it's, you know, been divinely arranged, but still it makes us a bit nervous and how everything's going to work and this and that anyway. So we just appreciate your support.
Yeah, I actually didn't mention that.
Oh.
Well, you can go ahead and mention that right now. Now that
Oh.
Sita came
Yeah.
on, Sita, you came right at the strategic moment to
Yeah.
mention what's going to be happening and what's going on. So tell
Yeah.
us.
Usually I'm barking in the background.
Yeah, so
But I have some fun, so I'll be back.
oh, the soup is burning. I hear it. Yeah,
No.
basically, yeah, we're purchasing the house. We're going through transition. You know, KG has been taking on the financial responsibilities for many years now of this project, and it was his inspiration to set this up, and then it came to fruition. But you know, we were talking about all the uncertainties of life, you know, and so uncertainties have come where he's just not in a position to be able to support from such a you know, a heavy way. You know, he's done so much and took on such a heavy burden. So yeah, we pooled together our own personal savings from doing Airbnb and catering and things like that. And then we've pooled together with the community to actually purchase the house and try and relieve that burden off of KG and his wife, and then also to make it more community oriented going into the future. So it's a little bit of a scary transition, but we are doing it, and it's scheduled to be for mid of next month. But yeah, you can, if you'd like, you can pray for the successful transition in which the Lord is ultimately pleased, and we know that will always be the case. But yeah, so we're very feeling this dimensional jump. I'm not so versed on all these things. I used to be all into the 3D, 40 to 5D jumps.
Just like you're surrendering to Creator and Krishna and the energy of the divine and all you do every day. It's just another surrender. It's just another believing in what I do when I want something to happen. And I think this is helpful. I've heard this and I know it works for me, is like I get into the space of feeling what it is to already have it. And I get really excited and I get that wonderful, loving feeling of gratitude that I have it. And then it makes it come faster. So I'm gonna see, I already see it happening, and you have to see it happening too, and just believe it and know it with all that you are in your heart space, and it's all going to work out divinely.
Yeah, we were told, it's funny, we just had a talk with one of our senior mentors earlier today and the importance of making the commitment to do it. And we don't know how we're going to do it. But just making the commitment to do it and being willing to surrender that this is our seva, this is our service, and we're going to do this service. No matter how we have to make the ends meet, we'll do it. Obviously within ethical and all the proper virtuous reasoning, but realistically to make the commitment to do it, which is kind of like that intention setting that, you know, this is the goal that is going to be manifested. It needs to be done. It's our service to do this. So yeah, we think it's amazing how it all came together. We never would have thought, especially you asked us 2 years ago, we'd ever be in a position to do this. But yeah, Krishna has wild arrangements and we're just along for the ride, and we're trying to just be of service along the way. And
And
Yeah,
I
we're
think
excited.
I think your spirit had something to do with it too, because you got out of your humanness and you let your spirit kind of take over and take the controls. And when your spirit takes over, everything magical happens. The synchronicities happen, the everything, the blessings, the miracles, they all happen when you get out of your own way.
You know what? That is the essence of our whole philosophy, is to exist purely from the spiritual platform and get the false identification of the mind and the body's cravings and desires out of the way and acting from the pure spirit. So I am very encouraged that you see that some of that, or you're perceiving that some of that has happened in me. And I pray that that continues to happen more and more. And thank you for reminding me of that, because that is the very goal of my life, is to be engaged in my pure spiritual nature, and getting out of this thing getting in the way and this thing getting in the way. Even though
You're on a great path, my friend. You're on a great path, and I see you. And I think that's the most important thing in life, is for us to say we see each other, because I see you. And we have to see everyone. We have to see each other. Really, really see you from my heart.
Wow.
And that's very, very important.
Well, thank you for seeing me, and I'm seeing your service, and thank you so much for engaging us today in service, and being able to, even if only a few of your lovely followers are able to appreciate something that we're offering, that will be a great success. So thank you so much, and I hope we can serve your community that you're helping to stimulate here on the interwebs and the YouTube channels. And yeah, and if any of you do want, or if you ever want to hear more from, or journey together through these Vedic teachings, or we might not have time to really hit the books and go so deep into all the study, it's not practical for everybody. We are doing it online series to take people gradually through it, and so if you want to join, or if anyone wants to join from your channel, feel free. I don't know if you know where I'm at on YouTube, but it's Ramadasa space Bhakta,
Okay. Okay.
Bhakta. So I can write it in the chat if you want. And
yeah, please do that. Please put that in there for everyone. And everyone feel free to check that out. And if anyone wants to support Mantra Central in any way they can, that would be appreciated as well. So yeah, I think we're gonna jump off here now, because this is a perfect ending point to our conversation. But I want to have you back on again with Sita. We'll do that again in maybe a couple weeks or a few weeks, whenever we can all align, because I know we've tried to align before, and both of us have had stuff come up and life comes up, and it's a journey. So we come when we can. But I definitely want to have you guys on again. And it was wonderful chatting with you. And thank you for sharing your energy, your time, and your beautiful house with our guests, because I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, and we appreciate you, and we hope to see you again soon. And any of you who would like to join us, please come. Our main programs are Sunday afternoon, 11:30 to 1:30. You can look up Mantra Central on Google, and you'll find us somewhere. Yeah, Jill, we totally want to, even if we just see you, if this whole podcast inspires you to come to a program, it's already been a great success. So yeah, and we miss your dancing. Your dance. we were just mentioning, not everybody's feeling so enlivened in the spirit that they're ready to dance, but you're always ready. And
What'd she say?
My wife is saying you and Jen are like the yin to each other's yang. You're like a perfect combo when you're here dancing together. So
you have to come.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna come soon. I promise.
Yeah,
I promise
no
I will come
pressure.
soon.
We just
I
love
love you guys. We will get together really soon and do this again. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Jill. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Bye.
I'll see you soon.
See you soon.